You're going to see the...
And
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Love and Democracy on what is a beautiful day in New York City, where I am. What's it like where you are, Paku, in Minnesota?
there's a slight frost, but it's gorgeous. We haven't had the sun in a while, so it's so wonderful to see a blue sky.
Beautiful. Love it. Here too. So we are so excited. Hundreds of you have signed up for today's program, Love and Democracy. And Paku and I are going to do a couple of things this morning. Like any event, we've had a little bit of a snafu with one of our opening speakers. So we are going to just adjust, as women always do. And we're going to share a few things with you. We're, of course, just thrilled at the agenda today. We are thrilled to have two Congresswomen, Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, to provide you inspiration. Cori Bush has just let us know that she can come on in a few minutes, and she is going to, she's a pastor. She's an amazing, speaker. And so you are going to be uplifted. And that's one of our goals today, right, Paku, is to make sure that this has been a crazy 2020. And to make sure that we do some healing today, some loving on you, our community, and hear from some remarkable women.
That's exactly right, Erin. We want to reflect on what happened in 2020, but we also want to discuss how do we create the democracy that we deserve, right? A democracy that is fair and just for everyone.
And so you're going to hear from hi, Renee, you're going to have two amazing panels today. One is led by Rhonda Briggins, who, as if you've been following Vote Round Lead, Rhonda, one of our co-founders and board members down in Georgia. Amazing panel with Nsé Ufot of New Georgia Project. Wanda, I'm blanking on Wanda's last name. Wanda from Black Voters Matter, who's the senior director in Georgia, and Joteka Eddy, who ran the Own Your Vote campaign. And they're going to be doing some amazing conversation about both the multicultural coalitions that Black women led, the work that's happening on the ground, and then what happened within the Black community, which, some of the pundits are missing some of these real stories of our organizers on the ground.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. And then our second panel is an amazing crew from Republican Women for Progress, Voto Latino, Advanced Native Political Leaders. We'll talk about the Native vote, the diversity within the Latino vote, and the diversity within Republican women and how Republican women voted and fared this election cycle. So I'm psyched for that. What's your favorite piece going to be today, Paku? I know you're interviewing two remarkable women.
So I'm going to totally fangirl. So I'm going to embarrass myself, but I'm really, really excited to be interviewing Rachel Bidkoff. Folks will know her as the elections whisperer. She's hella smart, and she has such a wonderful critique and analysis of what happened in 2020, and she's definitely going to have a perspective of what we need to do to move us forward towards the democracy that we deserve. So I'm really excited about her, and I'm also really excited to hear from our alums. I really do believe that systems change will happen when we have people who look like us in public office, and I think that's going to be a really exciting panel too.
And I'm really psyched to hear from Representative Emily Sirotto. You're talking to her about reform with the Electoral College. That's a lot of questions I know we have around the Electoral College. This is the third it's two presidentials in my life where the popular vote didn't match up with the Electoral College. And I think there's a lot of history that you're going to provide for us and how actually that got shaped. So that's a conversation I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, that should be really exciting. And I think, it's a real critique about how we don't have enough civics in our school system, that we are having some of the vulnerabilities among the voters being, so vulnerable to disinformation. Right. And she's going to give us a little primer, kind of Civics 101 on the Electoral College. And then she's going to be diving in about reforms that are really accessible and that will make our democracy much more equitable. So I'm really excited about that conversation too.
Love it. Love it. All right, so I want to share a couple. So unfortunately, folks, Queen Afua had some logistical issues this morning. We are going to try to fit her in. A remarkable healer, the author of 5 books, a leader in the Green Movement. If you are not following Queen Afua, check her out if you need some love and some healing. But unfortunately, this morning is just not going to work for her. And we get it, right? This is pandemic life. sort of how things roll right now. And so, if this happens, as some of our folks are joining, most of our folks are joining us live, we're going to be forgiving and gracious and make it work when we can. And so we will try to fit her into the programming a little bit later on. And we're going to work to do that. But for now, we're actually going to kick off just hearing a little bit about our alumni. So as you know, I think at the top of the ticket this year, while we focus on state and local office, we are just thrilled to be seeing 4 Vote Run Lead alumni in Congress. They are all Black women. Cori Bush, you will hear from, is our newest member. Nikema Williams in Georgia, who took our training so way back in the day through the White House Project, right, which shows the sort of longevity and need for candidate development programs long before folks think that they are, of value. Ilhan Omar was reelected by big margins in your home state of Minnesota, and it was a nail biter, but Miss Lauren Underwood, Illinois 14th, as those mail-in ballots came in, will be going back. So 2 registered nurses, both Cori and Lauren, both Representative Underwood and Congresswoman-elect Bush, are both registered nurses. So that is also a pretty cool tidbit about the top of the ticket.
Erin, I thought it was also really interesting, and I know you'll talk a little bit more about this, but how in our research, we found out that for all the women who were running for Congress, 25% of them came from the state legislature. So I always think about, like, if you want to know who's going to be next, where are folks waiting in terms of, the pipeline for Congress, it's going to be the state legislatures. And we know both Ilhan came from the state legislature, and Rashida and a lot of other really dynamic women in Congress right now. So congratulations to all of them.
And, we also have amazing local wins across the country, which, state representative, actually, as you were talking about, Palku, is the #1 seat that Vote Run Lead alumni ran for. So 221 alumni were on the ballot on November 3rd. And while 55% was the win rate for overall, so every other woman basically ran her race. And now, while, that's exciting, of course, like, we're super psyched about the thousands of women that got trained this year, so we can make sure that 221 number is even higher. 64% of them were running as a challenger or an open seat. So, these are new women stepping into the political pipeline. 55%, as I said, won their races. But of the women of color who ran, 71% of women of color in the Vote Run Lead Alumni Network won their races.
Isn't that phenomenal?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this idea, all the way from with, watching Kamala Harris, which, I was crying. I know where I was when I got that news on Saturday morning. I was, in a park here in New York City with my kiddo. That women of color are electable, right? 71% of the Vote Run Lead alumni of color are winning their races. This conversation that women of color are somehow not electable really needs to be just dead in the water.
Completely. On the night that the race was called, I called my 9-year-old niece, because it's a historical moment, and it reminded me that from many of these younger children in their lifetime, they've only had they're going to have a woman of color vice president. They've had a man of color as the president. Secretary of States who are women. Their elected officials are women and women of color. So there's definitely a new world that's being ushered in.
Yes. So we're going to get into some of these deeper election results as Rachel Bitecofer is with us. Let me just double check that. Yes.
Yay!
Yeah, great. So I too have a girl crush on her, or just a regular crush. I don't know, some sort of crush, which I'm stalking her on Twitter to get her to join us. So I'm going to depart. You'll see me all day. Paku is going to be in conversation with the doc. And hello, Rachel. Hello, everyone who's watching.
I'm so excited to be here. Woo! Guys, have to deal with my weird green screen issues for now. I'm working on solving that, but I haven't quite figured it out. I'm waiting for my second green screen to come so we can elongate the area. So
no problem at all, Rachel.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you could join us.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here. I'm sorry. I had to put up the that Doc Bitecofer Yahoo account as a way to contact me, and then I never told people when I stopped So that's 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 not cool.
You've been busy, you're right. I mean, let's be honest, you've been super busy.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So like I wasn't understanding why she was like, oh, I'm gonna give you another chance to respond. And I'm like, I've never even heard of you, lady, but yeah, I'll come to your thing.
this is awesome. Well, let me contextualize this conversation a little bit, and then I have so many questions to ask you. So as our audience members know, we are talking about love and democracy, and how do we form a democracy that is really democracy that we deserve, one that is where everybody is equal and fair for everyone. And in order to really have that conversation, I feel like it's important for us to look back at really where did we come from, how did we get here, and obviously that brings up 2020. And so before I ask my questions, I want to just introduce everybody to you, because I really am a girl. I really do have a girl crush on you, and I've been kind of stalking you. And
that's all right. I welcome crushes of all sorts, and it can be any type, especially because I need them to offset like all the hate I get. I get a lot of hate. I mean, some of it I talk about, like the election Twitter boys and all of that. A lot of it is like more scary types of hate, like neo-Nazis hunting me down. And I don't talk about them on Twitter and stuff because that's what they want me to do. They want me to tell you guys about, them, the things that they're doing to me, so that they can, get value out of that. So it's very important. I would urge anybody who ever is taunted by a hate group or by Republicans or whoever's doing that stuff. I make a rare exception, like I did on Saturday night, I think, or Thursday night when I think it was probably some high school kid or something that he woke me up in the middle of the night with I'm doxing you. I think like he's actually using the word dox wrong, but he got my cell phone from the internet. Apparently it's floating out there, and he said, "Are you Rachel of the Lincoln Project?" A lot of people think I'm a Republican. And I was like, what? Because I was asleep, and then he said, "I'm doxing you. You deserve to get doxed." And then like he had called like 5 times in a row before I answered the phone. And I realized that his phone number was showing up. Like the first 3 times it showed up restricted, but something went wrong after that and it was showing up his phone number. So I was like, well, I think I'll just teach this one a lesson,
Yeah. Well, Rachel, let's talk about that then. What were the dynamics, the trends, the cycles? What were those things around 2020?
So when we talk about 2020, I'm kind of shocked that like no one has noticed this yet, right? That in 2019 in July, I laid out a forecast that argued Democrats are going to win the election in 2020. Come fall, we're going to be looking at an election cycle where the conversation is, they are really looking dominant in the Midwest, back in that blue wall area. That's because people don't understand what happened in the Midwest the first time. Wasn't really a revolution. I'm so sorry, but I'm stuck at home. Like
I love it. We love kiddos.
So people don't really understand the first time what happened in the Midwest wasn't really like a revolution to Donald Trump. I mean, in the 2-party vote share, he doesn't crack 50%. Other than in Iowa and Ohio, which are 2 states that are more like Missouri and Indiana in their composition, and as political scientists that study polarization and realignment understand, those are states that are realigning to the right, that have low levels of college education, and are more apt to be moving towards that political right. And, but in the other states, it wasn't a story of him having this dominant election cycle. It was about Democrats, that Democratic coalition, which also includes independents that vote Democratic when they show up, shooting itself in the foot and not showing up, or showing up and voting these protest ballots for either writing in Sanders or Jill Stein or Gary Johnson because he smokes pot and so do they, or, whatever, right? And so we're really talking about a profound misunderstanding of what happened in 2016 by, a narrative driven by the other analysts who are all these, white men, and they are focused on this one narrative. Not to say that that's not a narrative, it's a narrative, but it's a narrative that I and, Alan Abramowitz and other people in my, political science community understand to be something that is predictable and part of a long-term pattern, and not something that was some like, oh my God, Donald Trump caused this massive realignment of non-college educated white people having this populist nativist revolution. It's like, no, working class whites are going the other way, and they're going to continue to do that. And of course, Joe Biden was convinced he was going to be Scranton Joe, and he was not getting political advice from me. He was getting political advice from people who were telling him, oh yeah, no, Trump's got this disaffected electorate, and the ones that you see on TV are reflective of the Republican Party writ large, and they're embarrassed about this guy, and you're going to be able to pull up, probably a better outperform Clinton in Scranton and Western PA, and there's me on the other side saying, no, actually, he's probably not, and the turnout amongst the Republican Party's share of the white electorate is going to be robust, right? And
so tell me about that. Like, what happened on November 3rd, right? Like, what do the election results tell us, Rachel, about the country now?
Yeah. So it tells us exactly as I predicted 16 months ago, which is that it was an election cycle. It was not about the old school pre-polarized era construct of, we're going to have this hearts and minds debate, about this big group of independents or swing voters, and the better argument is going to win, right? That's not what happened. That's not what's going on out there, right? Instead, it was a battle of coalitions, a battle of the bases is how I originally came out of the gate phrasing it, but I realized that base is a bad way to say it because that makes people think of a certain thing, and they might think of progressives if they come from that community, or they might think of Black voters if they come from that community. And so I've changed my language since my New York Times op-ed 2 years ago, right? That really initially launched the forecast, and now I call it coalition because I want people to understand it's the Democratic coalition surging their turnout, learning that lesson from 2016 that if they don't vote, they'll lose, right? And it's women, especially college-educated women, especially white college-educated women. I don't know, actually. It'll be interesting to see if white college-educated women have a performance difference compared to women of color with college degrees. And we just can't know that until we have all the data to look. And then Latino, followed by Asian voters, actually followed by Asian voters, followed by Latino voters, followed by Black voters, was what had the turnout surges in the 2018 midterms, which was what my analysis focused on, the voter file, not on survey data, right? Hard data, voter file data. So like this idea that Black voters did not represent in 2020 is totally nuts, okay? They did not represent the largest component of this winning coalition. They were never going to do that, and I don't know like why anyone would have expected that, certainly not if they were reading my research. My research was always clear. This Dem coalition is going to surge their turnout. The surge is going to be biggest in the suburbs. The 2016 convo was about rural America. The 2020 convo is going to be about suburban America, and it's going to be about a reshaping of the suburbs through Dem coalition turnout there, and like Nate Cohen's got this, like he's got a Trumpian view of the suburbs where it's all white people, right? But it's not. It's very, very diverse because of gentrification in the cities. Actually,
Yes.
White people have flocked back to the cities, right? So
Yes.
it's actually both in the cities and the suburbs. We have more diversity. It's just, more white people in the cities, more people of color in the suburbs, right? And so, almost everything that I said in that presidential forecast 16 months ago has come to pass. Now, in the Congress map, me and everybody else were wrong, right? But the way and the reason that we're wrong, the conversation that they're trying to misdirect the country to cover up the wrongness of the argument of persuasion, which is what they have, this commitment to keeping this persuasion argument alive. And frankly, it's already cost Democrats the ability to win on the redistricting and reapportionment cycle. So, to continue to try to not just say, okay, you know what, we have to reassess now, like this argument about, obviously it's turnout and coalitional, turnout changing the composition of the electorates that are playing a big, big role in election outcomes. It's not to say that there is not a swing vote. Pure independents swing their vote choice. So but they aren't careful about that language when they make these analysis of, you read Cohen's piece, you read David Shore's piece, they hide what they're talking about and make it sound more expansive on who is being persuaded. But who's being persuaded, to be clear, and I know when I get this final data from the gold standard survey data that I can use to quantify this, we're going to see that the people that were swinging vote choice are pure independents, not leaning independents, right? Not pure. We're talking about people who do not say after they're prompted, I lean to the Republican Party, right? We're talking about pure independents. And that's because, and it was more robust even than it would have been, I think, for the Biden race at least, because of the COVID mismanagement. But where Biden wins and the congressional races go wrong, guys, to understand why the negative partisanship forecast basically hits it dead on, but the Congress stuff doesn't happen, is because Biden's campaign manager number one resists the urge to go full Scranton Joe, right? Some of her strategy, she calls it Mo-suasion, goes into lower propensity Democratic coalitional turnout and making sure that ultimately their electorate has, competes with the Republican turnout, right? So if that had not happened, Biden would not have lost, okay? Or not have won, period, okay? If you don't have percent Democrat equal or close to percent Republican, you're going to lose, right? My guess is when we get this voter file data, though, it's not going to be, certainly Democrats are not going to outperform Republicans on turnout. I think we're going to see exactly what I saw in that 2018 analysis. We're going to see Democrats trail Republicans in percent proportional to their registration of turnout, because Republicans are going to have done a better job getting their voters to the polls again. And that is a product of, the bulk of the Democratic campaign resource and strategy going to trying to win the argument amongst independents, and that argument not being tailored only to pure independents. Admittedly, not easy to find them stratified out of a voter file to find out who's truly persuadable. I'm trying to find just pure independents. It's not the easiest thing to suss out, right? But if you're my assumption is if you're running a Democratic campaign, the way that DNC thinks about things as of now is that you don't need to suss that out. You should go talk to these right-leaning independents and try to get them to convert, even though it does not work, okay? And my guess is right now, what they have done in this cycle for the congressional maps is they have overinvested in that, and underinvested in turning out voters of color, young voters, college-educated women, single women in particular, because once women marry, regrettably, they seem to absorb their husband's political attitudes, and men are much more likely to be Republican than women are. So you really want to turn out single women voters as much as you possibly can, right?
I love what you just said, Rachel, because it's really about focusing on, your community. And so I wanted to ask you, if we're having this conversation about what is the democracy we deserve, and given your perspective and your insights, Rachel, how do we form that democracy, that the one that does protect the most vulnerable among us, the one that does have equality and fairness for everyone, not just those that are wealthy and connected?
You have to win elections and have political power, period. Okay. Because before you can do anything else, you have to be the people that are enacting policies and forming the legislative agenda, right? Why are people in the bottom 50% going to have the crappiest Christmas that they have ever had, probably since the Great Depression? Is because Republicans control the Senate right now, and Donald Trump controls the White House, right? Trump is easier to work with, frankly, than McConnell in the Senate. Trump would have been happy to sign off on a $1,600 stimulus check and would have given people $600 unemployment bonuses if Nancy Pelosi could have gotten that through the Senate, okay? Because his name was going to go on the check, and the Democrats are inept. So it's not like they were going to think to run ads to tell voters, hey, that $600 a week bonus, unemployment bonus that's keeping you in the middle class and not dropping you down to working class world, that's coming from us, right? It might have Donald Trump's name on it, but we're the ones that gave it to you, right? Because they don't do that shit. I mean, that's going to, all I can say without giving things away is, watch the space to steal something from the other Rachel, because that's coming to a change, right? But right now they don't do that, right? They don't tell voters all the good stuff that you have comes from the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party, right? So, but yeah, this is going to be an epically horrible Christmas for people in the bottom income strata, and it's a product of intentional decisions made by the people who control the levers of government. And the fact is that everybody who's working in this area have to consider each of ourselves as a vessel of civic educator, right? Because if you don't convince people, okay, here's how the process works. You go to the ballot booth and you vote in people who are going to enact good policy, who are going to, change the, structure of your state and local and whatever government. This is why it matters, because if Congress right now is controlled by Democrats, they'd be doing A, B, C, and D, and your life would be impacted in these ways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's how things would be better, right? So if you have to make that story for, voter at the door, right? Because they don't know that. And Democrats, they skip that whole part, right? They think like everyone has this base level of knowledge about everything, and then they come in with a master's thesis and start the conversation there, right?
It sounds like you're saying, Rachel, it's number one, it's about focusing on your base in your community and then winning. And that is how we shift our democracy to make it be more representative, right?
Yeah, and that is a perfect segue. And I hate to cut you off, but we have Congresswoman-elect Cori Bush with us next.
Oh, hey!
It literally is the embodiment, right, of going after voters that folks said would not turn out for her, right? Just proving so wrong.
I'm hoping to get to know the Congresswoman well in my upcoming endeavors. And yes, I mean, that's exactly right. Yep.
Thank you so much, Rachel. You are going to have a large fan base following this, and we are deeply appreciative of you.
It's going to be a truly people-powered revolution.
I love it. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
All right.
I can't think of anyone better. Thank you, Paku. To talk about how that happened. And Congresswoman-elect Cori Bush is here. And then right afterwards, we're going to actually talk to women who built these coalitions to build the democracy that we deserve. So as many of you know, Cori Bush she's a single mom, a registered nurse, an ordained pastor, a community organizer. She was a sort of an on-the-ground medic during the Ferguson uprising. She's the co-director of the Truth Telling Project. She's been given a ton of awards for her amazing work. She's been on the front lines. You saw her possibly in Knock Down the House, but that was her first run. Her second run, I have to say, I was like feverishly looking at Twitter, because while they had called it for her opponent, I knew that was wrong. And I am so proud to have her as part of the Vote Run Lead community. If we could bring Representative-elect Cori Bush on. She is here with us to share us a few words, and we're just so thrilled to have you. Thank you so much, Congresswoman-elect. And I'm going to let you take it away. I know you were on a tight schedule.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Erin. I appreciate this opportunity, and I just love Vote Run Lead and all that you all stand for, what you all are doing for women like me, for, regular women, that choose to run for office. Oftentimes when we step up to run for office, it is because of, a need, and it starts with us, with our own selves. It's what is my need, what is happening, and I find people that I can connect with that are in positions of power, who are addressing these needs and addressing it in such a way to where I can actually feel the change. And so that's what's happening right now. We're not waiting any longer for someone else to make these decisions for us. We're not, going to continue to expend all of this energy, pushing, hoping, wishing, praying, begging, for our politicians to rise up and to listen to us and to understand that we have issues that aren't being addressed. Now we're doing it, and through time we have, but now there is just this serious push and this influx of women who are standing up saying, I'll do it. You don't have to, I'll do it. And I'm so honored to be one of those women and to have had, Vote Run Lead, the training, and not only for me, but for so many others. When I think about all that is happening in our country right now and across the world, but especially in our country, as much as things have been difficult and are difficult, when we think about the over 250,000 people who lost their lives to COVID-19, and how that did not have to be so. We think about our essential workers and how some nurses and healthcare workers are wearing one mask for a 3 days, a 3-day shift. When we think about how, people have to make sure that they're not, when they go out to work or whatever they have to do, when they come in, that they don't have to, that they're not bringing it home to their family members. Just all that we're dealing with when we think about what Congress has done and has not done, where they could have made change and they didn't. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, the question is, who are we? And what do we bring to a table? Not the table necessarily, a table, because it's a bunch of tables. And if there is a table where I don't fit, like Shirley Chisholm said, I will bring a folding chair. And if by chance they don't even let you in the door, she didn't say this part, if they don't even let you in the door to where their table is, then you bring your own table. You get your own door, your own 4 walls, or you do it outside and you have a table big enough for everybody to sit at, regardless of what kind of chair they have or if they choose to stand. So that is what we're doing right now. We create our own space because we know our needs. We understand what our community has been fighting for so long. We understand what our communities need. So if we don't pay attention to who we are, it's great to acknowledge people that are doing good work. But what about you? What about you? You may say, well, I'm a daycare worker. What do I bring to a table? You bring expertise that somebody who is not a daycare worker has. Everybody has something to bring, to add to what's happening in our society right now, to help push us to more progress, to help in the way of progress to a positive change in our districts, in our towns, in our cities, in our country. So do that. We can't stand by the sidelines and think that we don't have what it takes or we don't have enough. If I looked at every single time someone said, I don't look the part, sound the part, dress the part, my hair is not right, my skin color is not right, and all of these things. I don't have the education, you don't have the family background, you don't have the money, you don't blah, 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 blah. You don't. Well, you know what? I do have a title right now that says Rep-elect. I do have that. And I have it because somebody took a chance on me after I took a chance on myself. And so what I'm asking for you to do, think about the power that you have. Look, just because you don't acknowledge that there is a sky, does that mean there is not one? It's there. You just may not acknowledge it. There is power that you have that you can use to better yourself, your family, your network, your community, your country. All you have to do is acknowledge it and tap into it. Figure out what that thing is. So no matter what's happening, no horrible things are happening, but you can change. You can change that, even if it's in just your own family or your own block, or even if it's on this mass scale. You have power to change it. So pull on. I know things are difficult, but pull on that which is on the inside of you and understand that you can bring something. You can change someone's life right now. All of us can. I'm here today. I'm alive today. And it's not a saying, it is actual truth. I am alive today, not in a grave today, because some person that no one even knows her name, this person stood up for me, and she worked with me and helped me to move out of the place that I was in. And so I'm alive today because of that. You can help someone to move out of a situation they're in. Some people are in domestic violence situations and they just need a way out. Some people are hungry today and they just need some food. I had somebody show up at my door one day when I was so hungry. My mind was doing some strange things, and they just showed up at my door with a bag of groceries. They didn't ask any questions. They just showed up and dropped the groceries and kept going. You just never know. You can make change and help people's lives. So pull on that thing, reach deep for it, understand what it is, and know that you have greatness on the inside of you that can go out to the world and help change it individually and collectively. So that power that works on the inside of you is amazing if you use it. So I am compelling each and every person who is under the sound of my voice right now for you to tap into that thing and use it right now, not next week, not 6 months from now when you feel like you got some kind of certification and all of that, or now. People are hungry now. People are dying now. People are hurting now. People have needs now. So let's move from this place of comfortability. Let's move from this place of I may. Move from that place and go into the place of I know that I'm somebody that can bring change. You walk in that, and when we put all of that together, no matter what's happening in Congress, no matter what's happening from the presidency on down, our people will be taken care of. Thank you all so much, and I can't wait to talk with you again.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Representative-elect Bush. I know you are so very busy. And I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for your words. I'm so grateful for your energy. And I just can't wait to see what it's like to have you walk in the halls of Congress.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate you so much, Erin.
Right.
I do.
We will see you soon. Thank your team very much. They have been wonderful. We love you. I think what Corey hit on, what Representative-elect Bush hit on, is exactly what you're going to hear from our next panelists. And if we could bring them on screen, that would be great. I'm going to introduce them as we do this. The moderator, as you know, is Rhonda Brigance. And while she's the vice president of Jacobs Engineering, she put $1 billion in lobbying for public transportation in Georgia. She is the co-social action chair nationally for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She's fabulous, as you can see by it's either Tom Ford or Gucci glasses. I'm not sure which one she has on today, but she's got 20, 30 years of experience in public policy. She's on the ground in Atlanta, Georgia, raising her son. She's a lawyer by trade, and she's going to moderate an amazing panel with Nsé Ufot, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the New Georgia Project. And Nsé, as you know, is like, she's the shit, everybody, okay? I don't know how to, you can read her bio. She is the driving force between this beautiful, multi-ethnic, intergenerational movement of voters in Georgia that people have been watching. And probably Stacey Abrams' smartest move was making you the Chief Executive Officer of the New Georgia Project. And so, many of us have big visions, but it's, big vision is one thing. Making it happen on the ground is what Nsé is doing. She is joined by Joteka Eddy, who is not only the founder of Full Circle Strategies, but another sort of woman behind the visionary Own Your Vote, hashtag Own Your Vote. If you have not seen it this year, that is the massive effort of African-American women led by the Oprah Winfrey Network, Miss Winfrey herself. But, again, it's Joteka who did the work. And I really love that she's described, I want to get it right, as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. Like, I want to be you when I grow up. Can that happen? And so she's going to tell us how this coalition is going. They're continuing to do the work. The Divine Nine was a part of that coalition, the big national civil rights organization. So you had a lot of big personalities that you had to manage to make that coalition work. And I also want to bring on Wanda Mosley, who is the senior state coordinator for Black Voters Matter in Georgia. Following her on Twitter has been nothing but a joy because she is doing the power building. She is working with Black-led organizations to gain those electoral votes. She's on the bus. She's going to rural Georgia. She is she's an amazing force, part of the Electoral Justice League with the Movement for Black Lives. And I also love that, she's a Delta. I know Joteka, you're a Delta. Nsé is a Delta. Okay, so this might just be the Delta panel. And Wanda, we need your screen to come on so you can join and I can get off. But I do love how in her biography, your biography, Wanda, you credit your great grandmother on the sort of intergenerational power of the vote, especially within Black communities. And I know that Rhonda's going to talk about that today with these phenomenal women. So welcome to all of you. I'm so grateful for your time, and I will see you at these tail ends.
All right. There you go, Wanda. Come on, let's do pyramids. Come on, everybody. I hope they take a screenshot of that.
I love you all.
Oh my gosh. So when Aaron said I was moderating, I instantly was like, oh, Deltas, yay. But it's always us leading the pack. And I am excited and have watched everyone over this election cycle and been on many of these panels with you and still working. Wanda and I have been trying to move resources to the ground and working with the D9 and everyone. And I know Nsé, you're doing everything you can for the runoffs too in Georgia. And Joteka's always in the background doing everything that she can to keep this thing moving. I'm going to start out. We have about 4 questions. And so this first question is really for Nsé and Wanda. How long have you all been working in Georgia? And then what exactly currently are your organizations doing to move this whole thing called love and democracy forward in Georgia? Let's go with you, Nsé.
Okay, so I immigrated with my family in the 80s when I was in elementary school from Nigeria and became a U.S. citizen in high school. And so I feel like the work, so single mom, parents were divorced. My mother got a third job to pay for our immigration lawyer. And I was responsible for making sure that we passed the citizenship exam because they weren't going to embarrass me. I was going to pass. right? And so I think that in preparation for and actually becoming an American, I started to internalize like that government of, for, and by the people, and thinking about the rights and responsibilities. And I dared to believe that like the things that were laid out in the Constitution actually applied to me. And so if I'm honest, I would say that I was a very precocious, lightweight, annoying volunteer of the kind of racist Democratic Party in Georgia in the 80s and 90s, because I cared a lot and again, was a civic student. But in this current iteration, I moved home to launch the New Georgia Project sort of voter registration and civic engagement piece in 2014. And yeah, and it's been a labor of love to fight for and build a democracy that Black folks and Southerners deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Wanda, what about you? What have you been doing in Georgia? Then what are you currently doing?
Yeah, so I am a transplant, like so many others who do this movement work here in Georgia. And I just want to say that I don't think it's a coincidence that so many of us are not native or indigenous to the state of Georgia, but we are all here in this time at this moment to do this work. So it is definitely ordained. It's the angels and the ancestors moving things around and putting all the pieces and the people in place to be here at this moment. So I moved here in 1996. I had a couple of careers before I started doing this work. I was a journalist. I was an event planner. I worked in sales and marketing. And then in 2014, got drafted to help with a little project called Souls to the Polls with this little group called New Georgia Project. And then 6-7 months after the election in 2015, I found myself there full time under the tutelage of Nsé Ufot. And today I am at Black Voters Matter, working to help build power, specifically in rural spaces, in areas outside of Metro Atlanta, because those are the folks who, don't necessarily get called on. Resources don't necessarily flow down to Turner County or Calhoun or Clay County. But there are Black folks there who are hungry, who are eager, desire the opportunity to build power in their communities. And so we are so fortunate to be able to provide them with resources and help build up, their chops. Because, look, like my bosses at Black Voters Matter say, if you don't have a plan to do work in the South and you feel like you're going to make some headway in this country, your plan is planned to fail. Because the South, say it with me and say, yeah.
Sorry, I messed up your cadence.
All good.
I knew where you were going though.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think you all did the connection piece, and that's like so critical for me of always making these connections about how people, a lot of times people just think folks just showed up. And that's why that question was, really critical because, none of you just showed up. You've been working, you've been in the trenches for years. You're all connected in some way, right? If you like circle back, we all have these different connections and we all know each other in so many different ways. I always laugh, Joteka and I have been doing a whole bunch of work this year, a lot, but I met Joteka probably like 10, 15 years ago. And, Wanda, I've known about you for a very long time in different ways. And Black Voters Matter is like my extension of my family. I'm actually on the board. You Nsé, just all of the work that you've done way before you all came to this space. And so I want to really talk about coalition building. I mean, you all have built these amazing coalitions. I know Aaron talked about Own Your Vote for you, Joteka, but you also built Win with Black Women, and a group of Black women. We had been meeting almost a year ahead of the election, and start writing letters as a group and all of this. And Joteka took that group and grew it into this massive coalition of Black women around the country. bringing everyone together, celebrities and just, everyday folks. And so I want to talk about all of your work of coalition building. Why is that so important? Why do we as women, especially Black women, really know how to do that very well? And where you are also using that as a foundational piece of really building democracy around this country.
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here and on this panel virtually with all of you fabulous sisters. And I mean, what you say is just, I think we just look at the foundation that we have gotten to where we are in this country. Our democracy has gotten to where it has been. It's been because of the coalition of women. I mean, we all sit here as women, members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and we go back to 1913. It was a coalition of women that decided that they were going to do something about the situation that was around them and that they were going to take definitive steps together. And I think that if you look over history, it has been the coalition and the coming together of women from various sectors that have brought together power that have allowed us to move together. Like no one and no movement ever gets across the finish line alone. And so for me this year, what I wanted to contribute and my work, and I'm sitting here looking at Nsé. I mean, Nsé and I have been, we go way, way back. And I think that's a point that all of the women and the work and what we're seeing, the articles about women who made it happen and all of that, we are all women who have been deeply connected and working together for years. That this is not something that started last year, or these are not relationships or work that started even 2 or 3 years ago. This is work that has started years ago, even before, while I was still in high school. Sisters like Melanie Campbell and Mignon Moore, Donna Brazile, Yolanda Caraway, Bishop Leah Daughtry, Dr. Jonetta Besh-Cole, Hazel Duke, so many were doing the work building coalition. And what they did is that they intentionally brought us into the fold for us to learn, to do the work, and to carry the work on. And that is what we are seeing, the fruit of those investments, that work and that intentionality. And so for all of us that are doing this work, I think it's important for people to understand that this is not something that's newfound. This is something that is built on a long-standing foundation and a clear understanding that we move further together than we do apart. And that is what Black women have excelled in doing, and that is what we're continuing to do. And what we saw in this election was a manifestation of Black women owning our power. And it was an honor to work with Miss Oprah Winfrey and the Oprah Winfrey Network, and the work with Winning with Black Women. I see much of that work is very similar work and it's hard and spiritual work for me and so many of the women that were part of it. But it's really about us understanding our own power, our power as a people, our power as Black women, and our power of what it means for us to actually move votes, to move policy and issues. Because again, and I say this often, it is never about the candidate per se. The candidates play a very important role in the election, but it is always about us. It is about the power, and it is about the power that we're moving on, the work that we want to fundamentally change in the lives of the people in which we care about, that we advocate with on behalf of, and that we are elevating. And I think that has been the work of Black women in this election, and we're seeing the fruits of that power.
Rhonda, you're on mute.
I'm saying Wanda's off mute. So Wanda, since you're off mute, now I am too. Why don't you jump in there on this coalition building piece?
Yeah, I mean, look, in this power building space, in this place and time where we so desperately have to have power just to survive as Black people in America, it's a heavy lift, and we cannot do it by ourselves, nor should we. because no one person, no one organization, no one entity should decide our destiny. Everybody should have a role. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an idea of what freedom and liberation is going to look like for us. So it's not up to one person to carry and hold all that, because that's a lot. We overcoming decades of oppression. We overcoming, a force of people in power who are losing their power, and they are doing everything under the sun and creating some new stuff that hadn't even existed until now to hold on to that power. So that's a lot to ask us to overcome. And also, too, when you think about coalition building, inviting people into the space, giving them a chance to contribute, that's how you get buy-in. That's how they take ownership. That's how they gain and reclaim their power. So it's what Black women have done, I think, throughout time, right? We've always been the village. We've always been taking care of other folks, nurturing folks. And this is a continuation of that in this movement space and in this power building. It's all just who we are. It's imprinted in our DNA.
Absolutely. All right.
Can I say something?
It's your turn. Let's go.
Plus one to everything Wanda said, everything that Joteka said. I would also say that, because we constantly do the work to build coalitions within our community, and that's the sort of power building, the deep organizing that happens between elections, that when it's election time, that's the opportunity for us to flex the power, to test the power that we've been building, right? So, and to think about what those coalitions look like. So looking at, for example, a Biden victory in Georgia, people need to know that Trump got 71% of the white vote in Georgia and still lost, right? That Biden won with 29% of white voters voting for him. And it is because of Georgia's multiracial, multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-generational, progressive majority coalition that we can do this. I think that there were people who would try to give us sort of, guidance about relational organizing, et cetera. There is no path to progressive victories in the Deep South without relational organizing, right? Without leaning on who our people are. People, like, we may, what I feel is that folks, we may not have the sort of the nonprofit industrial complex buzzwords, but people understand power mapping on a deep and intimate level, right? Who's riding with us? Who's against us? Who do we need to organize around? Who's got resources? How many, what are we up against? So, like I said, the work between elections of making sure that we're building power, we're building coalitions. We know what our strong suits are and where our soft and squishy edges are and where our opportunity and growth areas are. Doing all of that work in between elections so that when it's go time, that we can flex our power.
If I could jump in.
Come on.
If I could jump in, because Issa raises a very important point, and it's evident in what we are seeing and what we saw in this past election in the work is that elections is just the start of the process. It is not the end of the process. It is the start. We go in, we cast the ballot, but then the work, that's when the real work begins after you cast your ballot, because it is the work to ensure that those that you vote for and those that you don't vote for, whomever makes it into office, is held accountable to the issues and the policies that it is that you care about. And that is the work that is going to be incredibly important for us to continue to do, and particularly as Black women who carried this election across the finish line on our backs, that it is not simply enough for us to win an election and celebrate it. Yes, we're happy about the history that was made, but now it is time for us to move into building power and policy that impacts our communities. Let's talk about these issues. Let's have our seat at all tables. I don't want just one seat. I want a seat at all the tables. And that is going to be the work that we have to continue to do. in between the elections. And that's the work that we constantly have to do. And that's work that has been happening because all of this voter registration and all of this work, I have been doing election work for many, many years. You cannot build an infrastructure that turns an entire state and shifts multiple states from from a Republican held state to a Democratic held state overnight. That does not happen in one election cycle. That is consistent movement building, that is community building, that is infrastructure building. And that is where we have to continue to focus on building infrastructure and building movement in our communities. Because if we only focus on just election cycles and go home, then we will do all of ourselves a disservice.
And if I
Yes.
real
So let's stay on that really quickly. Wanda, you trying to talk?
yeah, no, I was just gonna say real quickly.
Oh, go ahead.
Both of my sisters are spot on, because look, if we aren't consistent in how we show up for our folks, if we aren't talking to the brothers under the shade tree down in South Georgia, the sisters at the beauty salon and the nail shop in between elections, we're not coming around every 4 years and getting their ear and getting their trust and getting them to move. So that they're right. I mean, it's the consistency. It's the way we show up for our folks. And if we are not authentic in that, then we're not going to be able to move, and we're not going to be able to flip a state. It's just not going to happen.
And so that's what I wanted you all to stay on, Wanda, and maybe you come back for me a little bit for me on that. You know, we have this 2020 results in Georgia. We know we got to win the runoff. Like, what are we going to do with all of this moving forward in Georgia? Because we know we got to go back. We have other seats we need to take in Georgia. We know we need to really create blue wave on the state level, right? We've did a really good job on the national and the federal level as well as the local level, but the state, we need to change some more of what's going on the state level. So how will that look moving forward, both Wanda and Insay in Georgia?
Yeah, so this work has to be led by us here in the state on the ground who have been here all the time. We can't have people coming in with this national narrative of Georgia, come and save us, because that doesn't fly for Black folks. We were struggling before COVID. We are struggling now with COVID, but we are still surviving and we are still thriving. And so when we look at these runoff races, and let's not forget about this Public Service Commission, because understand our utility bills are on the ballot January 5th. Let us be crystal clear about that. So what we have to do is make certain our folks hear from us and understand why it's important for all of us to, like it was mentioned earlier, flex that power that we have. Show them what happens when we come together, and then explain why it's important. So talk to them about the George Floyd I Can't Breathe Act. Talk about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And then talk about not just the HEROES Act, but what in the HEROES Act works for us as Black people. Talk about those SNAP benefits. Let's talk about that child care that's in that piece of legislation. And then, like I said, the utility bills. Let's talk about what's important to us. Don't listen to what the folks on the outside are saying. They mean well, and we appreciate you all. And if you could just, funnel some coins our way, we'll take it from here. So we are going to be the ones that lead and continue and ride this momentum that we built here in Georgia.
I love it. I will just add that, before November 3rd, we were chopping wood and carrying water. And after November 3rd, we're going to chop wood and carry water on the way to January 5th. We're going to continue to do the things that we do. It's direct voter contact, direct voter outreach, talking to Georgians about the things that matter to them. Again, the way that we train our organizers is to ask people what they care about, because we have twice as many ears as we do mouths. And people will tell you what their hopes are, what their fears are for themselves and their families and their communities. And now the work is to connect the act of voting to the change that they want to see, right? So Georgians listen, one already told you, COVID is real. If you're looking at it as a healthcare issue, right? The cases are on the rise. But you know what? It's not on the rise. The number of hospital beds that we have available in Georgia, they're actually decreasing because of the closures, hospital closures, particularly in rural parts of the state. There's a hospital in Randolph County that closed the week before the election. Right? People still having babies. People still, dealing with cancer and other serious illnesses. And now we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And Georgians have an opportunity to vote for someone who's trying to cut healthcare in the middle of a pandemic, which is evil, and someone who's trying to expand healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. If you're looking at COVID through the lens of the economy, right? Massive job loss. We're preparing ourselves for, evictions, right? So they're preparing 12 million evictions in the entire country, maybe 400,000 in Georgia. When 500,000 families are without a home, we will be at a crisis moment. We don't have to know what that feels like. We can address that ahead of time. And so I think that smart people who've been talking to folks, trusted messengers, people who've been doing this work year in and year out, talking about the importance of this moment and the power of Georgia voters in this moment, I think is really important. And I'm gonna just add, for other people, before I kick it to Joteka, is that not only has Vice President-elect Harris made history, right, as the first woman of color, like just all of the first, check. She also has the opportunity to be the most consequential vice president in the history of the institution. If these Georgia races go in a particular way, we are looking at a 50-50 Senate, where, as Wanda mentioned, and as Joteka has mentioned, that she will be the tiebreaker on a lot of policy that actually matters, that matters to our families. And so I don't think that it's possible to overstate to Georgia voters how much their vote matters in this moment.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to have to wrap up, and I want to do rapid fire where you all give me a closing statement. But in that closing statement, I want to know, what have you learned so far about power and the creation of power? And wrap it up, send us home with some great words. And we're going to move swiftly to the next panel after this. But thank you all before that time for being here today. All of my sorors and girlfriends, and I can't wait to see everybody in person. So miss all of my people. So thank you again for doing this today. You're always so wonderful. But what have you learned so far about power and building power? And then give me some inspirational words so that we can leave everyone with love and democracy.
It's not a dirty word. You need it. You should go after it with vim and vigor and aggressively. That it is the ability to shape our circumstances, to stop bad things from happening, and to shape the world that we want to live in. And you owe it to the people that you love to get enough power to create a world that we can thrive in.
Awesome. All right, Joteka.
Well, I've been around for a long time, and folks used to joke with me because I would go to conferences and I would say, and we just go pretend like we're in person. So wherever you at, you sitting at home, I want you to look to your neighbor, and because I'm from South Carolina. So I want you to look to your neighbor, and I want you to say, neighbor, what's happening? What's happening is a fundamental shift in power. And I will ask you over and over again to resonate and say that word, power. That power. Voter suppression is about suppressing our power. But there is no power like the power of people. Because people power is always going to be any other kind of money or voter suppression any day, all day. I'm going to bet on the power of people every single day. And that is what we have to recognize and understand, is that we have power. We have power as a people. We have power as Black women. But what is important is that constantly that we are taking that power to create and to move impact in our communities. That is what is so incredibly important. And when we recognize our power And we have seen what is possible with the power of people in this past election when people come together. And I would say this very quickly. And I want to say this about Black women in this election. And I know we read all the stories, but I think it is important for us to understand the power that Black women leveraged in this election. It was Black women leading strategy. There were Black women that were pushing resources. There were Black women on the front lines of voter suppression. When you look at the Lawyers Committee, when you look at Advancement Project, when you look at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, you look at Fair Fight, those are Black women on the forefronts of that. You have Black women on the forefronts of the work in Georgia, Black Voters Matter, INSAE, Ms. Helen Butler, Deborah Scott, on the ground in individual states. Black women in culture, Black women in media, Black women in faith, Black women across the board, you name it, that were leveraging their individual and collective power that resulted in what has become the most historic consequential election in this nation, where we saw 91%, more than 91%, I believe, when the numbers come back, of Black women leveraging power in this election, where we see more than now 10 million more popular votes cast for one candidate over another candidate. And I know that Vote Run Lead is a nonpartisan organization. But when we talk about power, you have to think about what happened in this election. The history books have to tell the story that Black women leveraged collective power, and they leverage also their individual power. There were Black women like Oprah Winfrey that leveraged an entire network that centered Black women, both historical context of Black women and what Black women did to get us to this moment. And I think that's what's so incredibly important, is that we got to talk about the power that Black women leveraged more than 107 years ago, when we were pushed to the back of the line, when we said, oh no, we have to be there, because we recognized that we would leverage our power for this moment, this day, to make it possible for a Black woman, a woman of color, and a woman named Kamala D. Harris to stand up as the vice president-elect. That is the power of our people. That is the power of Black women. And I am so honored to be a powerful Black woman in this moment. I'll just close right there.
Ooh, that was a word, sister. That was a word. So really quickly, I'm just going to read this quote from Dr. King that is basically the foundation of Black Voters Matter. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. If you don't move in the spirit of love, then the power that you might gain is going to be reckless and it's going to be harmful. And so I would say to everybody out there, keep doing what we've been doing. We are winning. We have the momentum. We have the power. And also remind everybody, we are all organizers. You could be a single mom with 3, 4, 5 kids. Check, as Yoteka said, talk to your neighbor on your left and on your right. Make sure they know when election day is. They know where to go vote. They know what ID to take. We are all organizers. Cliff always says we all have a role to play. We will all be a part of the continuation of the power that we have built and the muscle we have flexed here in Georgia.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Erin now. I appreciate this opportunity, and it is about love, democracy, and power.
Wow. Just blew my mind away. Thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you so much, Nsé. Thank you so much, Otaka and Wanda. Like, you all are the thesis to this PhD conversation of a love and democracy, right? That we have to be intentional, that we have to invest in our people, that we have to nourish it, because today, look, we are harvesting what we have planted. And that fundamentally it is about organizing and it is about love. Just phenomenal. Like, I don't know about you all, but I am going to church so many times today. So thank you so much. And in that same vein, I want to introduce our next speaker, who has been a nurturer and a carer and a giver of health and wealth. She's a pioneer in the green foods movement. She's also the author of 5 best-selling books and the creator of the Heal Thyself product line, the founder of Sacred Women Rites of Passage program, and the CEO of the Queen Afua Wellness Center. So I want to invite Queen Afua to join us. Thank you so much, Queen Afua.
Thank you for having me. Oh,
Your
I'm so
wisdom.
fired up from everything that was already shared. Amazing. I'm grateful to be in the circle. Vote, Run, Lead trains women to have a voice, to be in leadership, and to win. Myself, Queen Afua, I've been a healer for the last 50 years, and I train women how to become healers of themselves so they may be healers of their families. I also train women that the healing starts in the home. And I know that we have been sent into our homes now to actually not die and break down, but break through. And to use our homes as wellness centers, and that there needs to be, as the women, we're the primary healers. It is an affirmation that was given to us, particularly the first mothers of civilization, based on African culture. And it says, we are the women who lighten the darkness. We have come to lighten the darkness. It is lightened. We have overcome the destroyers. We are there for those who weep, who hide their faces, who sunk down. They looked upon us then. We are the women. We are the healers. We are the women. We are the healers. So our coming forth in this time, this is right on time. During this pandemic, my world has turned upside down as everyone. The bottom fell out, and I got a call in the midst of it. I got a call from Beverly Bond from Black Girls Rock, and she said, my community of women, we don't know what to do. We're frightened. This is overwhelming us. Can you give us some words of inspiration, of encouragement? I said, I'm so glad you called because I am so ready. And what I presented was the 9 protocols to building up your immune system so that you can come out of harm's way, out of this pandemic that is eating up families, eating up lives. When many go into the hospital, may never see their family member again because the family doesn't know what to do holistically and naturally. The Most High, in all the many names, have given us a way out and a way through of disease, and that's through a plant-based lifestyle. That's through detoxifying our body, mind, and spirit naturally and holistically. So I have a school. It's a holistic school. And in the school, I teach the women through Sacred Women how to wake up the healer within that she may be most empowered. And in my school, I teach women how not to have to suffer every month through their menstrual flow while they're in the board meeting, that they could have a healthy womb life. I teach women how not to have hysterectomies or fibroid tumors, what to do with plant-based and foods and herbs and juices. All women need these teachings. They need the healing so that they can go forward in their full 1,000% power, because that's what's being called of us now, that we come forth in 1,000% power. It is said that this pandemic is going to be the worst time right now. In these next few months, the colder it gets, the more it's going to climb. But as it's climbing, we just have to climb with the wellness, to climb the healing. The women in my circle, Sacred Women, Women Heal Thyself, Women Heal the Planet. These women, they know what to do. They know how to heal themselves. They know how to use plants. And my spiritual daughter just came, the Queen of Green came and brought me some ginger juice. It increases circulation. Then she came and ran and brought me green juice. So that my immune system will be strong and empowered. And these are things that we can do to clean our blood, to be able to have the power and the vibration. I heard that power. Those women got me so charged, they got me so fired up from their power. And I say this every day to my students, my clients, to remind them the power is not outside. Tap into your inner power. The power to heal your life in body, mind, spirit, relationship, economics is within. And we have the power to heal ourselves. So I join forces with women on this level, women in politics who have a voice, who are dynamic, and who are powerful. And I'm here to support you in transforming yourself holistically and naturally. I started this journey when I was 16 years of age. I felt disempowered. I had chronic asthma. I had chronic hay fever. I had eczema from head to toe. I had chronic PMS, bedridden every month. I had headaches. I had so many diseases. I went on a healing retreat and it changed my life. What a difference one in my life. And I changed my lifestyle from toxic fast food, junk food, processed flesh, all of that. And then I moved into a vegetarian vegan lifestyle. And then over a season, congestion came out of my system. And I carried those diseases no more. And I was on all forms of medication. And I know that we're looking for a health plan. Well, this is a wellness plan. And if you take on the wellness plan, it will shift the fiber of the United States and the world. The power to heal ourselves, our family, and the world is actually already at our fingertips. It's in the garden. It's in the greens. It's in the water that you drink. It's in the healing bath that you take to de-stress yourself. It's in the clay pack that you put on to get rid of the pain. But you have to have the knowledge, and knowledge is indeed power. So in that walk of my journey, I opened up a wellness center, Heal Thyself. I wrote the book Sacred Woman, A Guide to Heal the Feminine Body, Mind, and Spirit. And in that, I kept looking for an answer to a question I heard, or a song that I heard in 1969. And it was at a little shop. It was called those the Black Shops. And the song was created, has a master plan by Pharoah Sanders. And I kept asking over the years, so what is this plan for peace and happiness throughout the land? I just kept asking the question. And I was asking the question and it stayed with me all the way from 1969 to now. And I realized as I reflected, oh, for me, we all have a part of the plan, as one of our sisters spoke on. We all have a part of the plan. So we're coming together, that strengthens the plan, because our lives matter. Black lives matter. Women matter. This is our time to come forth. And so in that matter, we must now take the mantle of wellness. Harriet Tubman, she's my model. She ran off the plantation. She ran to her freedom. But when she was aside, she said, wait a minute, hold up. What my mother, my father, if I can run off myself, maybe I can run back and get them. And other family members, 800 people of our people later, they ran with her. And she was in tune. She was in tune. She trusted her intuition. That is a woman's power. She trusted her inner prayer, and that was her guide. And she was a nature child. Her father taught her how to work with plants. And she would be able to feed the people on the road to freedom. And right now, Black women, we're on the road to freedom. And the harder it comes, the higher we go. The higher it comes, the deeper we heal. And so through these years, the books came, and that was the plan. And I didn't realize until years later, I'm working the plan from my perspective as a healer. Sacred Woman, that's part of the plan. That's liberation. City of Wellness, restoring health through the 7 kitchens of consciousness. That was part of the plan. Healthcare and self-care. Heal Thyself book written 35 years ago for health and longevity, part of the plan. Man, Heal Thyself, Wellness Warriors. That's part of the plan. Overcoming a sick womb. That's part of the plan. And so I'm working with my plan, and I'm not turning back. And every one of us, as we begin, as we're coming into the cesspool of heavy eating, Thanksgiving, may you eat well. May you eat holistic. May you eat natural, so you don't get caught up in the trap of toxicity and caught up in the trap of your immune system dropping and the respiratory congesting and family fear and all of those. You do not get caught up in the trap. And so I have a plan for you. Join me in my 7-day detox, a 21-day, and I will help you to overcome, and I will help you to get more strength and more power. The older I get, the more dynamic I feel. The older I get, the more energy I receive. It's like, which is the opposite. Normally, the older you get, the weaker you get. The older you get, the more feeble you get. The older you get, the more you lose your mind and lose your strength. And I'm saying that as we heal ourselves, we will shift everything in our homes. We will have control of our family's wellness. We won't have to rely on everything outside of ourselves to take care of ourselves. And to the women, we are the mothers of civilization. if we heal, then everything is like, it's like a pebble in the lake. When we, and as we transform ourselves naturally, holistically, then it spreads out to our community and it spreads out to our city. And I say in closing, the people make up the city. If you heal the people, you will heal the city. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Queen Afua. That was beautiful, and I'm so glad you were able to join us. And 50 years of healing, of taking care of ourselves. As we know, I just, I'm like, listen, I've got my little. This is coming in nicely, and it's if I don't take care of myself, and take care of this vessel for this little baby. And really just making sure that we do the healing and do the care that is needed for these warriors we have, for our democracy, for our community, for one another, and the women that we have today that are joining us. And so I want to bring our panelists on. Ariel Hill Davis is the co-founder of Republican Women for Progress. She is the president of the Industry and Regulatory Affairs at the Industrial Minerals Association, but she's just a badass. And so I'm going to make sure that you get some time to introduce yourself. I know we're running a little bit behind for your 3 schedules. Anathea Chino is the co-founder and executive director of Advanced Native Political Leadership. We're going to talk, I want to bring her on. And she works to create those pathways that I think Queen Afua was talking about, of how we make sure that we're visible, particularly with Indigenous women, making sure they are visible and represented in the U.S. political landscape. And then lastly, if we could also bring on Brianna Carmen, Director of Organizing and Partnerships for Voto Latino, born and raised in El Paso, Texas. She knows firsthand, the community issues, the connection to voter apathy. She is one of the youngest Hispanic women in the nation to manage a U.S. congressional race in her home district. And I think just 21 is when you did that.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I think, here we go. Great. Anthea, hey, how are you? Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to we have the bios up on the website for everybody to dig into your biographies, but I want to go, there's a couple things, right? In thinking about just the last panel conversation and thinking about, that the women are the light and the women are the lightness to this work. I know the 3 of you sort of continue to hold that light, continue to hold so many different folks in coalition. We heard from Rachel Bitecofer earlier about, it's not a base, right? It's a coalition. And I love that vocabulary change because it means we can have diversity within our own communities. And if one of the big headlines coming out of the 2020 election, and Brianna, I want to start with you on this, is that none of us are monolithic voting blocks, right? The Latino vote, the women vote, the Indigenous vote, right? We have this beautiful diversity within our own communities. And so the first question I want to ask you is sort of, it's twofold. It's, within that very diverse coalition in the Latino vote and at Voto Latino, like, what are you most proud of? Given that, you did have amazing voter turnout. And then what should we know about the diversity within the Latino voting community?
Definitely. So it's so nice to meet you, Erin, and fellow panelists, and just to join all the awesome folks who are, coming out of their homes, maybe watching on their phone, wherever you all are. Really excited to share this space with you and, talk about something that's near and dear to my heart as, a young Latinx voter trying to engage our community. And really, when I think about, my day-to-day job, it's pulling people who are from the community where I'm from, El Paso, Texas, a border community, other individuals all along the border, other Latinas, other young folks of color, and trying to make it so that way they understand this space is for them. We want people to, graduate and become lifelong habitual voters, and to realize that this political process is one way that they can wield power for them and their families and enact change that benefits all of us. I love thinking about, the Latino community as a coalition where, at the national level, it's so strange to have these conversations and talk to people where it's like, not all brown people are the same. We come from different communities, whether it's from Florida, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, even spots like Wisconsin and Michigan, which you wouldn't traditionally think of as being Latinx. But, you know, really within that, we saw this kernel of truth come out for this election in 2020. We saw young voters who are from the Latinx community supporting Biden at a rate of 3-1, Latinas supporting Biden at 70%, and young Latinx voters really showing up at unprecedented rates, giving Biden victories in states like Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and Georgia, which is just unseen and really, you know, gives me excitement for the years to come.
I love it. I love it. And Anthea, a similar question. I mean, I remember seeing this beautiful piece on PBS about just the energy around Indigenous folks voting this year, but also the barriers. And so what are some of the things you're really proud of in the work that you got to oversee and got to be a part of? And then what should we know about your community?
Gawatsi, Helpa. It's wonderful to be with you all today. It's great to see y'all. Yeah, you know, like our community has been mobilizing on our own, largely with the last minute like surge of like funding from elections and campaigns, but like really working on our own to build up political power and like maintain a focus on Indian country. At Advanced Native Political Leadership, we were an all volunteer crew up until 2020 in August. And so it is like we are the first national Native organization aimed at building political power for Indian country. So in 2020, and so it's like we like are quickly shifting, but now we're working in partnership with other national organizations that are doing incredible work, like Illuminative, Native Organizers Alliance, Indian Collective, National Congress of American Indians, that are all working from different points of view. One of the things that like we see is that like we are largely like invisible in the political landscape in so many ways, but what 2020 taught us, and like what I hope, you know, like I think of like the CNN graphic that showed, you know, like the demographics of like different communities, and then something else was 6% of the vote. Like that circulated in our community as one, like as like humor, because it is like we know that we are a powerful voting bloc and and deserve to be named as that, and also that it shows like how invisible we are still on a national landscape. So for us, it looks like one of the things that we did at Advance this cycle was Marie Claire sent out the magazine, did a publication of like 100 influential women, like with quotes about why they vote. Not one Indigenous person on this list. So we created our own series. So we reached out to our community and we started doing like our own graphic series talking about like why we vote and why it's important that we get out. Also, like what we do is like we did weekly Facebook Live conversations. Our community, like with all the complications of Facebook, our community is gathered there. It is the way that we communicate with each other. It's the way that my community, I'm from Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico. It's the way that our governor communicates with the rest of the community. So we did Facebook Live conversations, educating like just talking about like why it's important, talking about digital organizing. We also, one of the things that we did at Advance was the state-based organizations doing civic engagement and GOTV work had never been brought together in coalition. So we brought together 11 states from across the country who already have institutions that have been either ranging from Nevada, which is just very new, they just launched this year for this cycle, to organizations in Alaska and New Mexico that have been around for years and years and years. So have like a lot of institutional knowledge. So we brought them together, asked them what they needed, and then put together digital organizing trainings for them. We brought together, like one of the things that we also have a need for is resources around fundraising. So we did some trainings around that. And
all of this within a pandemic, right? I think one of the things we're all sort of taking for granted or just sort of like not even discussing anymore is that all of that good work, all of that organizing, both in person and digital organizing, happened, you know, under this just massive amount of stress and strain that I think hopefully we will never experience in our lifetimes again.
It's true. And the pandemic impacted Indian country in ways that, I mean, in some of my communities, or like Pueblo communities in New Mexico, could have nearly gone extinct because of the impact of of the pandemic. So this is very real for us. Like, this is a matter of life and death. And when we hear stories like in Arizona, where somebody's family had 5 family members were attracted COVID and died, and the way that they choose to mobilize is to educate their voters around issues that impact us, and and our leaders impact our lives. We don't have the luxury of opting out of the political process, as complex and as complicated as Indigenous our relationship is with the federal government. It's very complicated. But like, we are choosing and demanding that no decisions are being made about our communities without us.
That's great. That's right. And Ariel, this is a nice segue in thinking about, the diversity within your community, what you all represent at Republican Women for Progress. And I'd love to hear about some of the work that you all are sort of seeing nationally, and some of the, tell us a little bit about our RWFP, excuse me, and where what are some of the myths that people think about an organization like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you ladies today. I think the silver lining I will take over the last, 4 years, understanding obviously that Vote Run Lead is not partisan, but I am also a Republican that is a little unhappy with my own party. Is the community of women, I think, is just incredible. And it's what gives me kind of hope and the energy and the power to continue pushing. And Anathea, I think that the comment about you can't afford to opt out is really this other huge takeaway, I think, from this election cycle in particular. I come from a very political family, and I have always voted in every single election that I have the opportunity to vote in. It is a privilege. That is huge. And I think this myth that like your vote doesn't count is something that I think we've seen disproved in this particular election cycle. And I'm really hopeful that it encourages people to really lean into the fact that voting is really important. You want to be represented in your government at all levels, state, local, federal. In terms of Republican Women for Progress, so we are an organization that believes that our party needs to have more women at the table. I think it's incredibly important to have, as I said, a government that represents you and that looks like you. And the Republican Party, for a little while now, has not really represented the diversity of this country. Whether that's gender, ethnicity, race, it doesn't look like the country that we live in. And so Republican Women for Progress is committed to building and supporting a pipeline of Republican women to run for office at all levels. One of the things we're most proud about is the fact that a lot of the candidates that we work with, because we really lean into training and kind of hands-on just help wherever we can, is a lot of our candidates are women of color. A lot of them are first-generation Americans. And I think it really goes to demonstrate the fact that what you see at the federal level is not representative of kind of the broad base and coalition of what Republicans can be. And our goal is really to build that pipeline and to support women, because they bring in such different ideas and such different, perspectives and manners of addressing problems. And that's something that I think is really missing from kind of the public perception of who we are. We do like to say we're about 20 years behind the Democrats in terms of building the infrastructure externally to support more women running for office on the Republican side. But we're hoping to get there. And I think, when I look at our Women to Watch list, it's really incredible to me to see all of these women who, in a very polarized time, are still comfortable kind of coming out as women of color, as Republicans, saying, I don't subscribe to these beliefs, but these are the Republican beliefs that I do think we can put to work for better outcomes for my community and for the people that I want to represent.
Well, and which I thought it was so critical to have you as part of this conversation, because we are looking at how do we create these different coalitions, right? And I'm stuck on this change of so like the base never sat well with me, and I think this idea of multi-party coalitions, like I'm a straight working families party voter down up here in New York City, because the transition is towards electoral power. And Anathea, I want to go back to you, because we saw a record number of Indigenous leaders who will join Congress in our sort of where we were founded state in Minnesota. There's a record number of women Indigenous women in the state legislature. Kevin Killer, who was one of your co-founders, just got elected to a tribal chairmanship. And there's just, it's what you're doing at Advanced Native Leaders to sort of, how do we make this transition from voting power, and Brianna, I'm going to come to you next, from voting power into this electoral power of leadership, where we get to create the policy we want to see?
Mm-hmm. It's such a great question, because I think after having done this for so many years, what we recognize in the early days and what everything tells us is that when you're not doing this work every single day, you aren't working to build power.
Right.
You're actually not in the communities. You're not talking to people. You're not learning, like you're not understanding what issues are deeply impacting our lives, which often is not actually related to what's happening in Washington, or it often is like very different what's happening on our tribes or like in our own our own small communities. So for us, it looks like at Advance, it looks like making sure that our networks are connected. It makes sure also one of the things, I worked at Democracy Alliance in DC for years, and one of the things that I recognized is like on a national political landscape, non-native, is that there was such a lack of focus on Indigenous communities. Nobody was talking about integrating our communities into their programming, talking about there's so little research. I mean, again, back to the CNN poll of something else, is that there aren't mechanisms that are actually tracking our patterns and actually helping us to collect our own data. So what does that look like for us? That looks like we need to do this. Nobody's coming to rescue us. And so we're going to have to collect our own data. We're going to have to make sure that we get a part of national conversations with national organizations that are building strategies that impact our lives. So and it's a challenge to other communities that are where are the Indigenous people in this strategy, as we're moving forward, and who do we know that's in this space, in the state-based organizations or nationally, that we can pull in for conversations, because we are all over, So I think there is for us, it looks like making sure that we are a part of all of those critical conversations, and that we are making sure that there's an Indigenous lens, because part of what is so challenging for us is shifting this narrative around that that we are not a powerful voting bloc. Two, that we are not even still around. We regularly hear that people are surprised that we are still in existence, and not it's we are completely written into history books. And then secondly is that we are constantly having to face these stereotypes of what our communities are like. So if people are talking about, the founding, next week is upcoming, of this false narrative around what it looks like to have, pilgrims come to and what Thanksgiving is the historical meaning of that, causes historical trauma consistently for our communities. And then we have other things like racist sports names or Halloween. And so we're also fighting back all of these stereotypes that we have to it's a both and in all of the spaces. And for us, that looks like addressing all of those together with our allies and our community, doing it every single day, and making sure that we are addressing the issues and that we're pushing the issues that are important to us. Illuminative just did a Native Future survey. And one of the things that we recognize is that the number one issue for Indian country is mental health. And so when we're looking at how that impacts our communities, is that that's very real. So what does it look like for us to address that in our leadership and then hold them accountable to it?
And it's, not separate from the national conversation, right?
Exactly.
And so how do we, this both and this all of us, I think is really critical, right? Because it's a conversation we're all having within our own families right now. It's a conversation we're having as a sort of national mental health crisis. And then how does it show up differently? And so I'm so glad you're part of the leadership and you're on the front lines of this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Brianna, building off of that, particularly in thinking about building power for young Latinos, Latinas, Latinx community. I mean, thinking of Lina Hidalgo, right? In Houston at 29 years old, able to sort of transform the budget for how we do democracy and the impact that had in giving folks access. And so how do you think what is this trend, right, of high voter participation around young Latinx community members, and what's next for where they're going? And for you, are you going to run?
So on the, spectrum of political engagement, there's so many different pathways to get engaged. Building off of what Anathea mentioned, there's organizing by and for our community, where, it helps to have people who are from the community sitting at these tables, really directing policy, advising on what they're facing day to day, because it's a lived experience. And then on the second hand, really supporting candidates up and down the ballot, everyone from, the president to senators to your local elected officials who can advocate for your communities and holding those individuals accountable. What we're excited about, the first 100 days of the presidency is that it's going to determine really the direction that the president-elect is going in, where he was elected by so many Latinx individuals who are young, who care about issues like forgiving student loan debt, who are some of the heaviest hit communities by this COVID pandemic, who are suffering job loss or, a loss of wages because of the pandemic and because of the jobs that they're fulfilling as essential workers, really being on the front lines. So I'm really excited to see, what that means for policy, while not negating the fact that, we worked really hard to get our community out to vote. And now we have to work that much harder to make sure that their voices continue to be heard and that they understand, this is really the second step. And you elected someone to office. Now it's time to hold them accountable for what really matters to us. And, I really love the idea of just building up this whole coalition of leaders with me to come and, advocate for issues that we care about, getting young women elected to office, and getting people of color to participate in a political system where they've traditionally felt like, it wasn't made for them and no one looks like them. So why even bother?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's what you're building, Ariel, at Republican Women for Progress, right? Is that you all are putting out a different vision than what we are seeing as an opportunity, I think, for center-right women to have a political home. Right. Because I think there's some real extremism that we are seeing, and that's being rewarded right now. Right. And what you're offering, I think, is this bridge. Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like young women being attracted to the mission of Republican Women for Progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is our kind of stance on this is if you build it, they will come, right? I think there are a lot of people right now that feel politically homeless. And I think for those of us who, have decided that we would rather fight for a party that reflects us than kind of give up our registration as Republicans, it can be lonely. And I think that the benefit, as I was saying at the very start of, the last 4 years for me has been this beautiful community of women that I've found. And I have the privilege of working every day with these women who, are center right, want to get back to good government. I also, you can't really tell on this screen, but like, I throw people for a loop all the time. I'm a Republican. I work for a trade association in my day job that represents the mining industry. I have blue hair. And I also work for Planned Parenthood. And people just like don't know what to make of me, right? And I kind of love throwing that out there because to me, politics is kind of, it can flow, right? Like you can exist in this gray area, but too often I think people feel like if I'm not this like super Trumpy or if I'm not super progressive, like where do I fall? And I don't feel like I can use my voice. And so part of what we do is just kind of like throwing out the kind of bat signal and saying like, you're not alone. If you want to be a little bit more fiscally conservative, but you also feel like you are socially liberal, like there's still a home for you here. You do have to fight a little bit more. I also like to say blessed is maybe a little bit of an aggressive word for this, but I'm a pugilist by nature. So like, I am fine fighting in my party and being like, nope, this is my space and you can't take it from me. But I know that other people don't feel that way. So I consider it a privilege of my own space to be able to create other space for people to join me, just by the nature of kind of like the fact that I'm fine fighting.
I love that. Thank you for that.
But I do think that it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that feels like a truth, right? That feels like your truth. And I asked you all at the beginning what was sort of like a myth about your community, and I'd love Brianna and Anathea to close out if you could tell us like something to be really true about your communities that you learned in the 2020 election.
I can go first. What is true is that, like, obviously, like, we are still here and that we are powerful and we are telling our own stories. I think that, like, what is like evident, especially in when we look at like ways of like sharing how powerful we are, when you're looking at like states like Arizona, and turnout in 2020 was 25% higher than in 2016. We were able to like make key impact in the outcome of the election in states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Arizona. We already have really powerful blocks in other states like New Mexico and Montana. And what it looks like for us is like, what does it look like to like build more states to consistently be in those places? And the truth is that we're doing it on our own terms. And when we're looking at like electing like and bringing in more people and recruiting more people to run, it is as our authentic selves. It is exactly coming with like all of our culture, our traditions, our indigenous values that we are talking very openly about. We think of like Representative Deb Haaland, and it consistently is such a beautiful experience having known her. I was a founding board member of Emerge New Mexico, and she was in our first class. And so from like those very early days of like watching the trajectory and like how we develop and are developing in leaders, and you see people like Representative Ponkawi Victors and Kansas coming in full regalia. And like it is something in my very early days of politics was like recommended that we are assimilating, that there's a view of what it looks like to be a politician, and that is untrue. And so we are working like very intentionally to decolonize what that means, and that we are able to have imperfect backgrounds. We are able to have, you know, like multiple, like different, like family units that don't look traditional, like are very Western. And so like, it looks like all of these ways that we are breaking down what these barriers have looked like for us, and being really effective leaders for all of the constituents, not just Native people.
Thank you. Thank you. So Brianna, tell me what's true about your community from the 2020 election.
Absolutely. And, you know, just to plus one what Anathea said, that was beautiful. And I think, you know, I am trying to engage in something similar for the Latinx community, where we saw young voters come out. I believe the number right now is about 2.3 million more Latinos came out, and a lot of that is young. So this whole idea of, you know, really growing up and realizing this power that you have to hold your truth, to help, you know, define what trajectory the country goes on and how that impacts your own personal trajectory, and really creating a space for people to, you know, engage in it, whether that's running for office, whether that's advocating for policies that make sense, whether that's holding our members of Congress and other elected leaders accountable. And just seeing that, you know, we're not this sleeping giant anymore that you've been talking about for 20 years and have no idea how to discuss. It's people who are in these rooms, sitting at these tables in positions of leadership that are helping diversify our country and make it better.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to end. Thank you, Brianna, Ariel, and Athea, for this powerful conversation, for actually giving us some hope about what's going to happen as we move forward. So I appreciate all three of you, and I look forward to working with you in 2021.
Me too. Thanks, everyone.
Great to be here.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye. And you may also hear my toddler in the background. Let me bring back up my colleague, Paku Hang. And I'm going to turn it back over to Paku. I'm so glad the three of those women are in this fight with us.
That was amazing, right? That was amazing. So what I want to do is just, again, orient ourselves in this conversation. We're here to talk about love and democracy. And we've heard over and over from our speakers, including Rachel Bitkoff, to Cori Bush, to Wantana and Ense and Wanda and Rhonda, and then our last panels, that it is about community building. It is about community organizing, and not just organizing right now, but organizing year round and for the long term. It is about building coalitions, and it is about our own truth, right? And understanding that we are diverse people, we are nuanced, and that's beautiful. And when we do all of that, we win. But I'm also thinking that because this conversation is about love and democracy, it's also about how do we continue to grow and find and forge that democracy that we deserve. And I think that while we are organizing and winning, we also have to be open to new ideas and innovation, because as long as our politics are geographically based, right? As long as our urban centers are more concentrated and ethnically diverse, while our rural centers are more white and more conservative, there's going to be a schism. And as long as a voter in let's say Wyoming, that person's vote is 3.6 times more powerful or has more weight than a voter in California, our democracy is not fair. And so what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about, if we're seeking that democracy that we deserve, what are some of the structural changes? What are some of the reforms that we have to think about to move us forward? And I'm so excited to do that with our next guest, Emily Certora, who is a state rep from Colorado. So I'd love to have Emily come on. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
Emily, let me just do a quick introduction. Emily represents House District 9 in Colorado as a social worker and a proud progressive Democrat with years of experiencing working in government and in Southeast Denver community. As a representative for House District, she's championed workers' rights, campaign finance reform, a healthy and vibrant public education system, environmental justice, progressive tax policies, and fundamental reforms for our pillars of democracy. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So before we dive straight into reform, and specifically reform around the Electoral College or the ways that states assign like electoral votes, can we step back a little bit? And would you mind giving us a primer on like what is the Electoral College? How does it work? How does someone even become an elector?
Great. Yeah, those are really good questions. I always think it's important that we kind of level set at the beginning. And every presidential election for the last, 20 years or so, we keep talking and the attention keeps being brought back to the Electoral College and what is it, because it becomes so confusing given that 2 of our last 5 presidents have become president while losing the popular vote because of the Electoral College. So what it is it is the system set up within the Constitution to elect our president and vice president. So the Constitution gave each state a number of electors that is equal to the combined total of their membership in the House and the Senate. So their entire congressional delegation. I am in the state of Colorado. We have 7 House members, 2 senators. So our electoral votes total 9. And the electors are chosen by states. And the state legislatures each determine how those electors are chosen. So in every presidential election year, a group of candidates for elector gets nominated by political parties, usually at a state party convention or by the party state committee. And then these elector candidates are actually those who cast votes for president and vice president. But they typically do so because of state-based election laws, where 48 of our 50 states currently have state laws that award their electoral votes to the candidates who win the popular vote within each state. So basically what happens is electors assemble in their respective states on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, and then they cast their votes for the candidates that they represent. So basically, when you are voting for president and vice president on your ballot, what you're really doing is you are voting for a slate of electors who are then going to cast their votes for president. And
so Emily, why did our founders devise that system? That's because it's not a direct democracy then, right? So why did they have a one-off?
Right, it is not a direct democracy. There was a lot of debate about how presidents should be chosen. And of course, the Electoral College, like the rest of our history, has its roots in slavery. Because back in the late 1700s, there were about 40% of the people living in southern states were enslaved Black people who could not vote. And in order for the South, the southern states, to ratify the Constitution, the 3/5 compromise was created, in which enslaved Black people would be counted as 3/5 of a person for the purpose of allocating representatives and electors. And that is how we got the Electoral College, and there were a lot of ideas that were debated. The idea that it was supposed to be a deliberative body, bringing together great minds and ideas to make a rational choice over the passions of the people. But none of the things basically that the founders actually assumed about the Electoral College proved true. None of these things ever happened. It's never become this great deliberative body. It really, with the advent of political parties, became just another mechanism for political parties to flex their power.
So Emily, in this current system, right, who are the winners and who are the losers?
Yeah, I think democracy is really a loser in the current system because, right now, if you do not live in what is considered a swing state, your vote is taken for granted. And there are many people all across the country who believe, that their vote doesn't really count because they don't live in a competitive state. So, in my state of Colorado, we have voted for the Democratic nominee over the last several election cycles, which means that those Republicans casting votes for president in the state of Colorado, for example, their vote doesn't really count for anything. And we see this happen where second place winners, people who lose the popular vote, can still become president, and it really undermines the spirit of democracy. Just a little, in these battleground states, we know that they receive about 7% more federal grants than spectator states. They get twice as many presidential disaster declarations. They get more Superfund enforcement exemptions and more No Child Left Behind law exemptions. So this is not a really good system that we have for electing a president of the entire nation.
So this is the reform part, right? So what are different ways that we can reform the system so that it is more representative? And I know that you have actually been advocating for an actual, a different way of states assigning electoral votes. So talk to us about like the larger reform efforts, and then tell us about your proposal.
Right. So I, like a majority of Americans, believe that we should elect our president through a national popular vote, just like we elect, all of our other elected representatives, that the person with the most votes should win. But the Electoral College is embedded in our Constitution. In order to change the Constitution, one would have to, pass it through Congress and then ratify it by the states. That is a long and arduous process. So what has been come up with is this really fantastic solution of using the Electoral College to actually achieve a national popular vote with what is called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is an agreement among states that when a state joins, and currently 15 states and the District of Columbia have joined this compact. Colorado, we joined the compact in 2019, and then actually opponents sent it to the ballot to be voted on or possibly overturned by a vote of the people. But we won in this past election cycle, and Colorado is still a part of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And what that compact does is it says that when enough states join to total 270 electoral votes, which is the number of votes required to win the presidency, when that threshold is met, at that point, those states who have joined the compact will pledge their electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins the most votes of all 50 states in the District of Columbia. And so this is a really elegant way of using our current system to achieve a national popular vote. And it has been supported by Democrats and Republicans all across the country.
So Emily, in the current system or the old system, the electoral votes of a state are assigned based on how the state voted. But what you're proposing is that the members of this compact, they would assign their electoral votes based on which candidate won the national vote then.
Yes.
That this is a better proposal than what is deemed in the Constitution, where you have to go through a constitutional amendment, which is much more difficult.
Exactly.
So in your proposal, who are the winners and who are the losers?
So I believe that the American people and the American voters are the winners with this proposal, because at the heart of it, we are saying that every vote should count equally, no matter where you live. If you are a Republican in California, a Democrat in Wyoming, no matter where you live, rural, urban, suburban, Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated voter, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, your vote should count equally. That is the foundation.
Got it. So I want to close this conversation by asking you, how do people, push this forward, right? How do people organize to have their own states sign on to this compact?
That's a great question. So, like I said, we so far the compact has been adopted in 15 states and the District of Columbia, totaling 196 electoral votes. So we need 74 more electoral votes in order to meet that 270 threshold. And we have some opportunities in Arizona, in Maine, Nevada, Virginia, possibly Oklahoma. There are some other states around the country that we are looking at now where state legislatures can pass this law in their own state, because the Constitution gives states the plenary power to determine the manner in which they award their electors. And so this is a change that can be made at state legislatures. And here in Colorado, we have just proved it can be done at the ballot as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Emily, for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for, pushing this idea of a democracy that we deserve that's more representative by real structural reform. So good luck in your work. And for the rest of you, this is definitely a component of how we get to a representative that's a democracy that's more representative. So thank you so much, Emily. And I want to bring on my other co-host, Erin, to take us through the next panel.
Thanks, Paku. So I love the debunking the myths on the Electoral College, because it has been one of the biggest things that just friends and family have asked me about. My vote really doesn't matter. I was born and raised in New Jersey. It's sort of a traditionally blue state. So the idea that Representative Sirota is talking about and doing this workaround, this sort of constitutional workaround in which the states agree to ratify the national popular vote, is really quite brilliant. And where you can organize is at the state legislative level. And so you're going to hear more about how we can really take over the state legislatures. That's a new initiative for Vote Run Lead that we're going to be launching in 2021, and we want you to be a part of. But now we have, the biggest reform of all, which we believe is you, right? We believe it is everyday women with extraordinary powers, with leadership skills that are ready to be unlocked or are already being used in another sector, to really consider running for office. And so we have 3 amazing alumni, one of which is a fellow Coloradan, the Jenna Griswold Secretary of State, who we'll be hearing from via video shortly. But I want to bring on both of these fantastic women that I have gotten the opportunity to know in the past several years. Samra Baruch is the state senator-elect for New York's 55th district at just 30 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And we're going to 34? I'll take 30, young. Okay, politics, young. And my friend, Devonna Pittman, who, if you've been following VRL, we've featured several times, just a powerhouse in Minnesota, who ran for the Hennepin County Commission. But while it wasn't an electoral win, I think she's going to share with us a lot of the other wins around what it means to really run as you are and to power build in her community. So thank you both for being here. I'm so psyched to see you. I love you both. You're amazing. And I'm so glad for your time. And, as I really do believe, right, the biggest reform is us, right? If we want to see a different democracy, we've got to step forward. And both of you did. And really kind of, the number one seat that folks at Vote Run Lead run for is city council or state representative. And Devonna, you ran for county commission, and Samra, you ran for state senate. So we'll start with you, Samra. What about this position, about the state senate? What made you think that this was the place for you? this was where you were going to make change?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a plethora of things. You know, folks ask, did you wake up one day and decide that this is what you were going to do? And I always told them I kept waking up every day thinking that there was more that I wanted to do and that there was more change that I could make, which is really the thing that's driven me my whole life. Whether it was working in nonprofits, whether it was helping to start companies, going to the Peace Corps, it was all about how can I affect some sort of positive change? To me, nothing else was enough. If I couldn't do something that would make, you know, the community better than when I got here. And so, you know, one of the things I had a chance to listen to some of the panel today. And one of the things that stuck out was this idea of like our city centers and our rural areas and our suburban communities. And that is one of the things that pulled me to this seat, because it is a gerrymandered seat that has part of a city, a bunch of suburbs, and then down into a whole nother county in the rural areas.
Right.
And part of my story is being from all of those parts of our district and really growing up in the city, going to school in the suburbs, and my family living in the rural area for the past 100+ years. And so when I realized that this seat encompassed all of these communities I loved so much, I really did think, and of course now the dream came true, but I really thought, you know, what if we had someone who's lived in these areas, who can speak to people in a way that makes sense to them, who can come at them, you know, with compassion and having understood what it's like to walk in their shoes. And I'm honored that enough people believe in that too. But that is what this all came from, is I think our representation has to come from within us, within our communities, because that is the only way the change that we seek will actually become a reality.
And I don't think you're too far off from, you know, in a sense, why, Devonna, you thought about the county commission. I mean, you are in the fabric of your community right now. And so, you know, county commission, like a lot of people don't even know what a county commissioner does, right? So what made you think that this was the place for you?
You know, it was really crazy because I'm actually an insider. I work for the county. I've worked for the county for over 18 years. And so I've seen how policy is developed, how it's implemented, how it's executed in the county. And I've seen a lot of my coworkers, colleagues who are very passionate about reducing disparities. Once you get to the area of real leadership where the change can really happen, there's a lot of risk aversion that happens.
Mm-hmm.
We were really tired. I was really tired of all of these great ideas going to the top and never really making it. And I said, you know what? I've already been on the ground as a community leader. I've already been doing the work. And it was the scariest thing that I've ever done to say out loud that I'm going to run against this guy who is, you know, really my boss. And he had been in the seat for 28 years. But like you said, Samra, there was a perspective that was critically missing in that seat. And I wanted to make sure that we were not only challenging systems, but we were being seen. And I believe that by running, people started to look at communities that were missing in these policy conversations in District 1.
And I mean, this is not one of my formal questions, but you were seen. You had gorgeous billboards, like, you know, Vote Run Lead hat off. Like, what were they thinking? You know, I know it was close, and, you know, running against an incumbent, you're, you know, part of 2/3 of the women in the VRL community, like Samra, you know, we're running for open seats, are not incumbents, we're challengers, you know. So that's tough, but I think you're right in that you have built an amazing amount of political capital in a different way, Devonna, than you have a lot of capital in your community. You know, you're one of my favorite Facebook feeds to follow. Your daughter is absolutely stunning. You know, and so there's you know you have this kind of capital, but this campaigning is different, right? Campaigning is its own unique beast. And for you, what was the most difficult thing about campaigning? What was that thing that you were like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be?
Was that for me?
Either one of you, both of you can take it. Devonna, let's start with you.
I think she might be frozen.
Oh, she might be frozen. Okay, Summer, you take it.
I'll get her back.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to be honest about, because I think it's so important as we're trying to get more young women involved in wanting to run for office, but if I'm being totally honest, it was probably the attacks that you get. And, you know, if you went to trainings, which I did many of, including the Vote, Run, Lead, you know what's coming. Like, you know, they have you look over your Facebook, look at everything you've done publicly, and be aware that people will say things and find things. What I wasn't ready for was that they would make up things. And so I think that, you know, I told my husband often, you know, even if you know it's coming, it still kind of hurts. And I think that more than that, it was just creating more division in our communities, which you all talked about a lot today, that a lot of us on the local and state level have been trying to kind of bring our communities back together. And that's really what I ran on, was the fact that we could all be in this together. We could fight for things like education and healthcare together, regardless of our party registration. And so, so that was disappointing. And then I have to say, it was difficult to go through. But we stayed strong, and you know, we stayed positive, and we made it. But certainly something that wasn't complete.
Yeah. So Devonna, I know that had a little tech glitch, but Summer talked about some of the attacks and not expecting some of the you know, untruthful made-up attacks that came at her. For you, what was the most difficult thing that you learned during campaigning you want folks to know?
You know, there were a few things, but the one thing that happened very early was realizing that the people you expect that will be there to support you, it won't be them. And so the quicker you get over that, the more effective you can be in your campaign, the less energy you can put around that, because you will have people show up for your campaign that you don't know. You'll meet people in the grocery store who are so excited about you and you being the first Black woman to run for a seat, that they will jump on and help you. You will meet people that you call on the phone to ask for money, or people you call to ask to vote for you, and they will say, hey, I really like you. I will help you on your campaign. So the less energy you give to who's not showing up when you want them to show people, this is all very new to a lot of people. And so maybe they'll jump on board next time.
Okay. And I hate to like live in the negative, right? So I want to also get your, like, what was that thing? I mean, and Devonna, it might've been the same, you know, that reverse of the negative is that there were so many people you didn't know, but what was that really like magical, special moment of running where you were like, this is awesome?
It was those people who did show up, who really understood why this seat was so important for our communities to just take. You know, they felt like, oh my God, Devonna, we can do this. We believe in it. We understand that county commissioners can impact our communities very quickly with that $2.5 billion budget. And, you know, we were right in the midst of the George Floyd murder, and people wanted to make sure that there was accountability for our public safety offices, and the county commissioner had, you know, has a hold on that. And so just having people just show up, people I didn't know who showed up.
And can we get a little, you know, sneak peek announcement? Will there be a second campaign? Should I not ask, or can I get a wink and a nod on running again?
You know, I never thought I would run the first time. People have already been asking me to run for seats that are going to be up in 2022, which would mean that I would have to start next year campaigning. So we'll see.
All right. I like that. I like that. What about you, Summer? What was one of those really beautiful moments for you?
I think Devonna hit the nail on the head. And before I continue, I do believe you should run, because I have to run in 2022 again. We can do this together in 2022, 2-year terms. And as you know, with women, when we so many fewer women will run for the second time, right? And every man's going to run after they lose. So we need you, Devonna. But, you know, I think that she said it so well, so perfectly, that when people show up, and, you know, two things I'll add to it, it's still, you know, to this day, or at least up until a few weeks ago, every time we did anything and a whole group of people showed up, of course now it's virtually, I was still always taken aback. It's like they keep showing up and showing you that they believe. And the thing that I think probably Devonna was also coming up against. You know, we were in a presidential year where in some ways it was hard to get attention for a lot of us down ballot folks. And so she's so right. When people kept showing up for you, you know, they came off from their presidential phone bank or their presidential fundraiser and spent time supporting the down ballot races. That was so touching and amazing. And then there was COVID. So it was really hard to find out where that support was. And so when people stuck with you, even through the slog of the calls and everything that we had to do, it just showed you the little bits and pieces of what you were building. And that's the kind of thing that keeps you going to say, yes, you know, people will believe in this vision and we're going to get over the finish line.
Yes. And I want to pull this out for our community and be really deliberate about this. Neither of you said winning was the best thing or losing was the best thing. Both of you talked about the people in your community and the lives that you were able to affect as even just candidates, right? And the community change that happened. I remember folks' mindsets, Devana, you know, that you stood up to run. And I think that's what we're really trying to hit home today on like the theme of love and democracy. It's like the women in the Vote Run Lead community, these massive numbers of women who are running for the first time. We are in this for the right reasons. Like, I don't know, anybody comes up to in our trainings, and both of you have been at them, that's like, I just want to be super powerful. It's like, that never happens, right? We're coming to the table because we know that power has the ability in our hands to make the kind of changes that our community needs, that we know are possible. And I think you two are both, you know, Devon, I'm going to be texting you, telling you like when are you running the next time. We got legislative races coming up in Minnesota. You know, we got a whole crew of legislators. Now in the Minnesota legislature, the largest number of Black women just got elected for 2020. So very cool things. Samra, there's a lot of work to do in the New York State Senate for sure. Y'all don't know, the New York State Senate's a different beast, and I'm so thrilled to have you there. Quickly, tell me something you learned about yourself this year.
Okay, I'll go. Something I learned about myself, I think, is that our experiences and our stories have power beyond what we realized. I think that I didn't understand. I think we all live our own truths. Like, you know, we all have our own baggage, things that have happened to us that are helpful, things that have happened to us that are hurtful throughout our lives. One thing I didn't realize was how many people shared those stories and how much we can impact. Just like you said, Erin, just being a candidate, sharing your own truths. And this is what I learned from Vote Run Lead. By the way, everyone, it was running as you are. It was using your story. You don't need anyone else's because it's powerful, and seeing the effect that it had on people just by it being truthful and authentic. And that's powerful for people who hold identities that have sometimes been put into a box or have been told, don't be your whole self. To go out there and do that, win, lose, or draw, you really do change people and their perspective. And that was amazing. And I didn't know that I held that. And I would say really all of us hold that. It's just kind of having the guts to put it out there. And that was really an amazing lesson.
And what about you, Devana? What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, I learned that I'm not as afraid to lead as I thought I was. You know, we've been told over and over again in these systems as Black women, as women of color, that you cannot lead. It wasn't until I ran for office that I realized how much of a great leader I was. And I could tap myself on the back. You know, I could literally say, you know, talk to all of my teams, you know, the people who were in the field, my campaign.
We might have lost Devana, but I think we understand her sentiment, right? I see you nodding your head, Samra. And that's crazy. If you go back, Devana, and look at some of the past footage, you know, even that we have of you, you know, and sometimes it takes a mirror or one of these experiences to really see yourself in the way that so many of us see you. And I remember meeting you for the first time, Samra, 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m., some early breakfast. Same thing with Devana. I think it is, we are the ones we've been waiting for. You know, we are the ones who are going to bring about this democracy we deserve. So thank you both so much for hopping on today. I love you both. Vote Run Lead is so deeply proud of you, and we are excited for the impact you'll have at the state Senate, and to see what is up next for you, Devana. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so much. And we have an amazing message from Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold, 38 years old when elected, Vote Run Lead alumni, who is going to share with us a message that she has been putting forth. Colorado did it right when it came to elections, and it's under her leadership that this happened. So I think it's going to take us just a couple seconds to get Secretary of State Griswold's video up, but here she is with a message for the fellow Vote Run Lead.
Jena Griswold, Colorado Secretary of State. I am one of the newly elected women secretaries of state, elected in 2018, along with my colleagues, Secretary of State Benson in Michigan, and also Secretary of State Hobbs in Arizona. And there's also another woman in Pennsylvania who's appointed the Secretary of State there. And we really have been at the forefront of protecting our democracy, which just really shows the power of women running for office and, of course, winning and then doing good things. Here in Colorado, we are considered the gold standard for voting, and that's even true in the pandemic. We set record turnout numbers in our statewide primary during the pandemic and also again in the general election, with over 87% of active voters making their voice heard, which was just tremendous. And I want to fight to increase access, continue to innovate in Colorado, but also see the types of reforms we have in Colorado spread across the nation, because every American deserves to have their voice heard in our democracy. What makes our election model so special and what we need to see across the nation is vote by mail for all. Every registered voter should receive a mail ballot directly to their home. We need to see online voter registration, same-day voter registration, early voting, and then the type of access needed also. And that means hundreds and hundreds of drop boxes and hundreds of voting centers. As Secretary of State, over the last 2 years, I worked to increase access. I partnered with the legislature to add more drop boxes. We've increased drop boxes by over 55%. We added 42 additional voting centers, and these are big voting centers, not precinct level voting centers. And we guaranteed for the first time ever access on all of our public universities and tribal lands. And that list of innovation goes on and on and on. So what we need is more people elected in both state legislatures and secretaries of state seats and at all levels of government who are dedicated to making sure our democracy is fortified and expanding access for voters, because all of our constitutional rights are the same right. And the idea that you can have less access depending on where you live just isn't right. So those are the things that other states can adopt, and I'm excited to see the expansion over the next several years.
Thank you, Jena. I love that. The increase of 55% of drop-offs, the 42 new big voting centers, making sure that folks on tribal lands have voter access. And that's what people in the Vote Run Lead community are about this love and democracy and building the democracy we deserve. So one of the ways, and you're getting a sneak peek, it will be officially announced in 2021, but one of the ways that we're going to be building the democracy we deserve is that we believe women can take over the state legislatures across America, that we can get to reflective democracies in our state legislatures, that we can have 51%, maybe 52, maybe even 55% women in the state legislatures. And what that would mean for public policy, for the business of government, for just getting our budgets passed would be tremendous. Paku talked to you earlier about how 1 in 4 women in Congress actually started out in the state legislature. It would create a farm team of beautiful new candidates running for office. And while we did see records in 2020, those records were very similar to 2018. So we've got to figure out how we continue to build the farm team for the federal level. And for me, that's really about the states, these laboratories of democracy in the states. So check out this monumental shift in women's representation called Run 51. We're going to be doing this pilot work in 3 states, Georgia, Minnesota, and New York. There's a 4th state coming. I can't tell you what it is just yet, but we're going to have programming in all 50 states as we have had for the last 6 years. We're going to be making sure that women in our rural communities know what it takes to run for a state Senate seat, understand what it means to run for a suburban seat, what it means to challenge an incumbent for a state representative seat, because we have women in our network who have done it before and who have done it with this beautiful insider-outsider strategy. So consider running for the state legislature. It's the #1 office that a Vote Run Lead alum ran for, and about half of them won these seats. So head over to voterunlead.org, run_51. You can nominate yourself to run for office at the state legislative level or any level. And you can nominate someone else if you think someone else belongs at your state capital, making the kind of impact that our local leaders have talked about. Nominate them. And they can also run for any office. But we want you to consider running, and we're going to help you every step of the way for this powerful seat. And we want you inviting and asking at least 3 other women to consider a state legislative seat or running for office with the help and support of Vote Run Lead. And as Samra and Devana said, we're going to do it by running as you are. We don't change you, we don't sort of morph you into something else. We just give you the skills to be your powerful, authentic self. And one of those women who actually started out in the state legislatures in Michigan is now one of first of 2 Muslim American women that are in the United States Congress. And that is Representative Rashida Tlaib. And she has a special video asking you to join her in the halls of power. So if we could bring up the video of Congresswoman Tlaib.
Hi everyone, it's Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Thank you all so much, because if you're listening to this, you want to show up for your neighbors, for our communities in a very special way, and representing them at all levels of government. I know what I want is a democracy that is made of people like us, that really is seeing and hearing every single person, especially those struggling right now. I represent the 3rd poorest congressional district in the country. And yes, I became one of the first Muslim women ever elected, but I only did it primarily, not because I wanted to be first of anything, but because I knew the pain on the ground was getting much, much more aggressive. And I wanted to do something about it. And sitting on the sidelines just wasn't an option. So when we think about showing up, it's not just voting, it's not just volunteering, it's not just expressing the importance of policy, good, meaningful action. It also means sometimes putting ourselves out there and running. And again, being a voice and advocate for the community that raised us, for the community that continues to be able to just really show up with love. And so I'm asking all of you, show up in this way, run, because I need other people at all different levels of government to speak truth to power, to be close to the pain and the hurt on the ground. We deserve it. We need it. And so thank you again, all of you. And I can't wait. Many of you, I might be able to vote for you on the ballot, but I can't wait to see more women on the ballot. I know it is inspiring and it motivates me to work harder.
Wow. What an amazing past 2 hours.
2.5.
2.5. It went by so fast. Also, I just felt like I was at church, like I was just being inspired and just being inundated with so much love. What about you?
I felt happy about some of the women that we know are going to be on the ground at every level. When things seem a little bit dire, it really helps me to think about the women that all of us at the team, the amazing team we have at Vote Run Lead who have supported, but all of these amazing women who decided to throw their hat in the ring. That makes me happy.
So again, we want to just thank all of our speakers today. Rachel Bitecofer.
Rachel Bitecofer.
Sorry, I'm horrible with names.
Go take it. Edie was amazing. Oh my God, to close out that panel was just fantastic. Rhonda and Ente and Wanda, they were phenomenal. And I did actually learn a little bit more about the Electoral College, Paku, than I thought. I thought I knew a little bit, but that was really fantastic with Representative Sirota.
Emily, yes, and Cori Bush was so powerful. Oh my God, she had me in tears. Yeah. And then Anathea and Brianna and Ariel talking and reminding us that it's our differences, that we have nuances, but that is something that we should celebrate, because when we celebrate that and we focus on that, we actually win.
That's right. That's right. Great. Thank you. And thank you to Queen Afua and Samra and Devana and Jenna, and of course, Miss Rashida Tlaib for closing us out. And thank you, Paku, for being on this journey with me and every member of the Vote Run Lead team, all of our alumni. Check us out on social media. And of course, help us move these state legislatures where we're going to do some really awesome and innovative things by heading over to voterunlead.org, run_51.
Wonderful. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for joining us.